Thomas fans, and welcome once again. First thing I want to say is apologies that you had to wait for this one. I've just been really busy with a lot of my schoolwork and other projects, and this may be a recurring thing for the next few months. Anyway, today I will be talking about all 26 episodes of Season 4 and ranking them from worst to best. As ever, this video is my opinion and my opinion only, so if your list is different to mine, good for you. Originally aired in 1994 and 1995, all bar one of these episodes were based on the books by either the Reverend Wilbert Awdry or Christopher Awdry, and many believe that this was because Awdry was rather insulted by the original stories in Series 3. This series is also important in introducing a whole host of new engines, known as the narrow gauge engines, who lived on a different part of Sodor, expanding the railway even more. So, let's get started with my least favourite episode, which was probably the toughest one to choose so far. Number 26. Passengers and Polish. Despite Duncan being one of my favourite narrow gauge engines, I find this episode too similar to Rock and Roll, and I'm not a huge fan of that episode either. It is just simply Duncan refusing to work because he didn't get polished. I know this shows how much of a rule breaker Duncan is, but my mind does tend to wander during it. Number 25. A Bad Day for Sir Handel. Pretty much the same opinion as the last one, but I think I like this one more because Sir Handel makes a slightly better troublesome engine, because simply he's just lazy and rude. But again, I just don't like the episodes where it's about one engine breaking the rules and nothing more. Number 24. Sleeping Beauty. I know lots of people consider Granpuff and Sleeping Beauty as two great episodes, but the second one is nowhere near as good as the first. I know it's good that Duke is rescued, and I quite like the way in which he is found, but the thing that ruins this for me is they waste too much time on the unimportant bits. Literally half of the episode is a flashback of Granpuff to refresh our memories, but I just don't see the point of it. Also, the search and rescue scene is long and quite dull. I think getting Duke out of the shed should have been a longer scene, because it must have taken them quite a few hours to get him out. Also, the scenes with Stuart and Falcon are a bit rushed, so yeah, an episode that loses its focus a lot. Number 23. Rock and Roll. This one's better than Passengers and Polish because Duncan does learn his lesson in the end, but again, it's just Duncan misbehaving and breaking the rules. Also, one thing I don't understand with this one is the fact that Duncan can move and bounce under his own control, and none of the fans complain about this. So then why a Journey Beyond Sodor did people say the bouncing put people off the entire movie, when this wasn't the first time this happened? But anyway, it is great to see Duncan and Rusty get along in the end, but that's the only saving grace for this one. Number 22. Peter, Sam and the Refreshment Lady. Going back to what I said about No Joke for James, this is another episode that's too much like the future episodes that are considered the weakest and don't fit into what was the golden era of the show. Of course, this does teach children about patience, but at this point the show wasn't really an educational one, so yeah, too similar to future episodes, and we all know how poor those ones were. Number 21. Mind That Bike. While there were a lot of good stories made by Christopher Awdry that weren't made into episodes, Mind That Bike was okay. Although we only get to see Tom Sawyer the Postman in this one episode, he did make a pretty good human character. And I go back to what I said, that there should be more human characters in the show. But other than that, there's not a huge amount to say about this one. The writers do succeed in making us feel sorry for the postman, even though we've only just met him, but that's it really. Number 20. Thomas and Stepney. Despite me being a huge fan of Stepney, I'm not very fond of this episode. Why? Because of Thomas. His attitude towards Stepney makes Thomas so unlikable, and the worst thing of all is this is the first of the far too many episodes where Thomas doesn't get along with a new character, and I don't know why they keep coming back to this storyline. Fortunately, Stepney is the better new character in this one because he has something that the other new characters don't: charm. If it wasn't Stepney that Thomas didn't get along with, this episode would be even lower. Number 19. 4 Little Engines. This episode is unique in the fact that it's really the only episode where we get to see Skarloey's true personality trait, and that's really the only thing that sticks out about this one for me. This episode is just about introducing Skarloey, Rheneas, Handel and Peter Sam, 4 characters who are very popular, but that's it. It is great to see Skylar take the passengers home despite his problems, but other than that, this episode is just okay. Number 18. You Can't Win. Another good episode involving Duke, Stuart and Falcon. This one is another reminder of how smart and sensible a character Duke is. An engineer who gives it his all to try and get his passengers home has to be respected. Also, to see him get back at Stuart for making fun of him is very funny. Although this was already used in Time for Trouble, I do personally prefer this one because of how angry Stuart gets when he is humiliated. A good final episode for developing Duke's great character. Number 17. Home at Last. Of course, in this one, Skylar returns home after being repaired, and I don't know what happened while he was there, but ever since then, he has become a wimpy child, and Home at Last is the first episode to show this. Other than that though, this episode is really good. Duncan's first story was a brilliant way to show his rough behaviour, and when the Fat Controller threatens to cut Duncan down to size, you can't help but laugh at the fear on Duncan's face when he hears this. Another really pleasant, narrow gauge episode. Number 16. Train Stops Playing. Another episode that shows how much variety Audrey put into his writing. Although some cricket players would never chase a train to get their ball back, it's still really funny. Caroline's funny comments when she's chasing Stepney are a big highlight, and the chase sequence, while unnecessary, is very enjoyable to watch. Number 15. Paint Pots and Queens. A fairly simple story in the end, but still really enjoyable. There is only so much you can do with an episode where the Queen is visiting, but they do make it better with Henry's part of the story. The Fat Controller's comment when Henry is covered in the white paint is very funny, and despite it not relating to later on, it is still a good first half. The scene where the Edges are getting the station ready is very triumphant, especially with that great music. Another episode that doesn't have any drama but is still full of pleasantness. Number 14. Special Attraction. Although this is very similar to The Trouble with Mud in that it has two stories that don't really match, I still really like this episode. Bulstrode is such a great villain and I would like to have seen more of him. But other than that, Toby and Percy's two stories don't really work that well. I know they were both in the same Railway series book, but I think they'd be better as two separate episodes. Number 13. Bulldog. Another really good episode surrounding Duke, and this time with another character, Falcon. The scene where Falcon is dangling over the edge is quite spectacular, while I imagine the mountain set would have taken ages to make. Although Duke doesn't use the same insults he did in the book, because, you know, kid show, I love the one-liners that Duke uses in this, and it's another reason I love and miss Duke so much. Number 12. Special Funnel. I completely agree with the Unlucky Tug's opinion about the visuals of this one. The narrow gauge railway does look amazing when covered in snow. But in terms of story, there isn't much to say. Peter Sam just loses his funnel and gets a new one. I know there are a lot of people who judge the episodes based on the visuals, but personally I prefer to judge them as a story I can read to my kids, and Special Funnel is just okay. Number 11. Steamroller. George the Steamroller is probably my favourite road vehicle of the lot. He is so determined to destroy the roads, with or without Tall Hat's permission, and mixing him with another troublesome character into Handel is just the icing on the cake. The conflict they have is really enjoyable to watch, and of course, they settle it by colliding with each other. This is just a very funny episode that talks about two great villains in a head-to-head with each other. It's not as exciting, I'll admit, but enjoyable every time. Number 10. Gallant's Old Engine. Although they haven't really given Rheneas much character in his other episodes, the very first with him as a main character was fantastic. We hadn't really got to know Rheneas prior to this, and so we don't know why Skarloey misses him so much, until Gallant's Old Engine. When Rheneas just manages to get the passengers home with so much determination and effort, we start to really like this character. The scenes where he is popping through the storm are very nice visually, and it was a great way to bring another hero into the show. Number 9. Bullseyes. Daisy is without a doubt my second favourite female character behind Mavis, and although we hadn't seen her much prior to this, I am reminded how much I love this character. Her stubborn and boastful behaviour towards Toby is a really good character trait, and to see her scared to death of a ball is really funny. So of course I was delighted when they brought Daisy back for season 20. Number 8. Granpuff. You do know that Thomas and Friends is for kids, don't you? Season 4 kicked off with a bang with one of the saddest episodes in the show's history. I didn't really find this episode that sad as a child, but I did find it rather confusing and unusual. The trees growing around Duke's shed is a very tragic sight, but if there's one reason why this episode is only number 8 on my list, it's just I think there are too many montages of the edges working, and there's not really that much of a story to it. But despite this, Duke's old railway does look amazing in this. The 3 characters introduced are really likeable, and I actually wish that Thomas would end on cliffhangers like this more often to engage the audience more and make them want to watch the next episode. Number 7. Trucks. I do think that Rusty has become a bit of a boring character in recent series, but his first episode was really good. Despite only being on the narrow gauge railway for 5 minutes, he immediately makes himself welcome when he helps Peter Sam. The crash itself is really spectacular, and I think Peter Sam ending up with a crack in his funnel is very appropriate. The conversations that Rusty has with Harold are really interesting, and they share some great dialogue. A dramatic, but at the same time, calm episode. Rusty to the rescue. Before I say anything about the episode, I actually have a rather funny story about this one. The first time I watched this story as a child, I actually thought it was Stepney saving Rusty from the old railway because there were loads of diesels there, and since Stepney gets more of a hero status than Rusty for some reason. But anyway, this is the only episode of season 4 that's not based on the railway series, and it is so much better than Stepney's original introduction. Rusty goes on a mission to find an engine to run the Bluebell Railway, and the whole episode feels like a movie idea that's been shortened to just 5 minutes. I would much prefer to see more of Rusty's bravery and dedication nowadays, rather than his ability to seemingly know everything and always tell everyone what to do. Either way, I love this episode, and it was a great way to introduce my 5th favourite character in the show. Number 5. Thomas and the Special Letter. Despite me often preferring the rather dramatic, eventful episodes, there are still loads of really magnificent episodes where everything is positive. Although it would never happen in real life, it is great that the Edges decide to go to another railway so that the children can meet them all, and that says a lot about the characters in this show. Thomas's crash is quite spectacular, and you do feel hopeful that he'll be fixed in time. This episode is really triumphant and great to watch every time. Number 4. Bowled Out. A really great episode involving Stepney. The Class 40 Diesel makes a great villain for the series. Despite sharing the same opinions as the other Diesel villains, he seems more conniving and cocky than them. The moment where the Diesel is stopped due to the hat stuck in his air intake is really amusing, and to top this episode off we have a really good fast-paced moment where Stepney and Duck are taking the passengers in quick time. These two make a really good pair, and if Stepney is ever brought back, I'd like to see him and Duck share screen time again. Number 3. Henry and the Elephant. Obviously the main reason I like this episode is it's Henry's only episode this series, but I just find this one so funny and enjoyable as well. When the workmen are terrified of the elephant and the elephant squirts water at Henry, it's really funny, and we get a lovely ending with Thomas saying Henry was brave. And you know how much I love Thomas's caring side towards his best friends. Number 2. Fish. The nighttime episodes have to be some of the best of all time. The island looks just as beautiful at night as it does in the day, and the model makers did a wonderful job on this occasion. One of the best Christopher Audrey based episodes is really atmospheric, the story feels quite realistic, and the crash is just awesome. The sound of Duck hitting the van of fish is so loud, and I love how it echoes as well. Not many people talk about this episode much when they're talking about great episodes, and I don't really know why. At number 1, Toad Stands By. Ever since I saw this episode for the first time, it has always been my favourite of this series. Toad's first ever leading role in an episode was fantastic, and the fact that his idea is to basically pull Scruffy apart makes him seem like a really smart but crazy character. As for Scruffy himself, I do wish we could see him again, as I think it makes sense for the trucks to have an official leader. I would always watch Toad Stands By when watching my all-time favourite Thomas episodes, and I don't think that will ever change. Series 4 is a lot of people's favourite seasons, and I could certainly see why. It's definitely the most visually amazing season, but it only just misses out on the series that I will be talking about next time, Series 5. So, what do you think? Is your list different to mine, and what's your opinion on Series 4? As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, sparkle, sparkle, sparkle.